PrimeFish is a project developing innovative market-oriented prediction tools to strengthen economic sustainability and the competitiveness of European seafood and local and global markets. We will have, or we're expecting as outcomes of this work, prediction tools that are to be used by the catching sector, that's the fishery industry, aquaculture producers, processing companies, market analysts, and public authorities all together. Together with 16 partners spread all over Europe and one from Canada and one from Vietnam, we developed these tools that are software-based tools or web-based tools that give you an insight into what if and help you take decisions if you want to put new products on the market or enter products you already have into a new market within Europe. As you can see here, today we will talk about the competitive position analyzer. That is the second tool here on the right-hand side. A few more things before we start. We have a whole webinar schedule, 11 of them in total. Today is number 4. And the question that we raise is, are you competitive, and how our tools can help you to answer that question. The next one is here on the 26th, the PrimeFish analysis of the seafood value chain. And you can also see the other dates right here underneath, and they're also published, of course, on the website. So before I give over the word to our first presenter, I would like to put your attention to the yellow square that we have here. That is the chat window on the right-hand side of your screens. Right there, please enter all the questions that may arise during the course of this presentation, and they will be answered by the end of the webinar. Okay, so now I will give the word to Svein Agnesson, professor at the University of Iceland, who will give you a bit more insight into today's webinar's topic.
Thank you, Björn. Can you give me access to the... Okay, now let's upload what we have here. See now. Let me just begin by telling a little bit about what I'm going to be presenting today. What we thought would be interesting in PrimeFish was to have some idea of telling you a little bit about the competitiveness that firms and nations may enjoy in the real world. And so we decided that we would be developing a competitiveness index, and the index that we have developed is called is based on concepts of competitiveness that are well known in the world. Now, competitiveness is a word you hear quite frequently, but it is quite difficult in many cases to define. The World Economic Forum has a pretty broad definition, which is the set of institutions, policies, and factors that determine the level of productivity of a country. And the key word here is productivity, because productivity is hugely important as it can lead to growth and higher income levels, and hopefully, of course, improve well-being for citizens and firms. So the idea here then is to measure the competitiveness through some kind of index. They have this index in the World Economic Forum they call the Global Competitiveness Index. It is calculated annually, and currently it covers 138 countries, and it is composed of 114 indicators, which you can see here. And they are lined up like this. There are three sort of main pillars, and then there are certain subsections, which you can see here from 1 to 12. Now, this is what we looked at when we were developing our index. In addition, we also looked at something that had been developed 10 years ago called the fisheries, the fisheries competitive index. And we decided that we would add an A to it. So we would call it the fisheries and aquaculture competitiveness index. Now, what was the main idea behind this? Well, we wanted to have a tool that would allow policymakers and industry to get a feeling for the competitiveness of individual countries and individual firms. And for that purpose, we needed to develop two kinds of tools. One that would measure the competitiveness of individual firms, and this would be done through a survey, and the other one which would measure the national level competitiveness, and this is similar in a sense to the competitiveness index I just discussed, but with a greater focus on fisheries and aquaculture. And of course, this has been developed with our colleagues here in this project to a web-based software tool. So let me just give you an idea of what this. If we start at the firm level index, we base this on the ideas of Porter on the competitive forces. Now, Porter maintains that firms in the industry, they are facing competition from many different sources. One is that if you start here in the middle, you have the firms which are already in the industry. Now, what would that be? That could be things like collaboration and research and development and the importance of that, innovation, market size, value chain responsive, competitive strategy, cost leadership, technological sophistication. These would be all included in this here. Then there is the threat of new entrants. Sometimes there are barriers to entry. They may be institutional, they may be capital, they may be other kinds of barriers. Firms may have scale economies that they can enjoy. There may be good location. The uncertainty level is important, the access to good labor and experts. Then we look at this here, the suppliers. The suppliers to the firm, they can have supplier power. There may be competition among suppliers, which makes the price of supply of inputs go down. There may be questions about the quality of the inputs, the access to the inputs, the timing of the inputs. And then on the other side, you look at the buyers, and what are they like? Well, they can be very sensitive to changes in price. They can be very loyal to the brand. They can believe the brand is strong. They are also focusing on things like the association between quality and price, and the quantity and the timing of the product, whether it is being offered for sale. And then, of course, there is a question of how diversified are the marketing options of the firm? Is it dependent on just one buyer, or does it have a host of buyers? And then finally, we have other substitute products, and this is important because what other products are there in the market apart from the one that your firm is selling? So that, of course, has an impact. So this was for the firm, and we did this by having a survey among firm operators. We had 40 questions for fisheries firms and then 45 for those in the aquaculture business. And then we have the national level passing, and this, of course, refers to the nation as a whole. And in this case, we have a bit of a different schedule, because here we are basing the input for this index both from the Global Competitive Index, but we also base it on data we take from official agencies like statistics, and we have data on various issues related to costs or in the firms in the industry as a whole. But we also do surveys. And the idea behind the surveys was mostly that we wanted to find out the things that are special to the industry in question, like the management of the fisheries or the aquaculture. So those are the things that we will be looking at here, broader level, national level, so we can see how each country the position of the countries one against another. Now, this, like I said, we have the information taken from this Global Competitiveness Index, public domestic sources, and then we had a survey among the experts. And this is quite thorough. So let me just explain a little bit more what we were doing in the national level. So we had these three pillars as before. One was basic requirements, where we looked at things like institution, management, and infrastructure. And then we had another one which we called efficiency enhancers. So we were looking at individual markets for labor, for goods, for financial services, the education and training we had, and also focusing more on the industries in question, like fisheries specific inputs, fish processing specific inputs, aquaculture specific inputs, and then of course also at things like market size, which was very important too for us, and technological readiness. And finally, the third pillar in the national index was on innovation and sophistication. So let me then turn to the results. We only have a few firms in our sample. We have only fisheries firms. So these are the general results. We have a scale from 0 to 7, where 7 means that the firm is most competitive. So the higher score you get, the more competitive you are. And you can see here, there's one firm from Iceland, there are 4 firms from Newfoundland, and there are 3 firms from Norway. And what is interesting here is that within each country, like within Newfoundland and within Norway, there is a substantial difference in the performance of each of the firms. So it's not just between countries, but also within firms, within countries. And if you look at this in more details, you can see here, for instance, the threat of new entrants. The Icelandic firm and one of the Norwegian firms regard this as being regard the threat of not being very great, so they have a very competitive standing because of that. And then if you look, for instance, over here at the threat of substitutes, and you see here that many firms regard the threat of substitutes as something that is reducing their competitiveness. So what we can do through this tool is we can identify which of these forces is having the most positive impact on competitiveness, and which one of those is having the least impact on competitiveness, is reducing competitiveness. So this could give policymakers and firm operators the ability to really see the strengths and weaknesses of their operation. The similar thing we have here for the national level. We only had a scant data for Newfoundland, not very complete data, but we had good data for Norway, Iceland, Spain, and Vietnam. So this is the overall score, and again from 0 to 7, with 7 being the best score. And you can see these 3 countries here, Norway, Iceland, and Spain, they are quite equal in ranking, with Vietnam lagging somewhat behind. And if we go behind and we try to see what is it that is causing this, we can see quite clearly that there are things like the basic requirements that we have that are lacking in Vietnam, and which are causing Vietnam to have a weak competitiveness compared with the other countries. And here we are talking about things like management or aquaculture and fisheries, which is not at the same level in Vietnam as it is in the other countries. As regards the other things, we see here that efficiency enhances, looking at individual markets and looking at things like the quality of education and training and stuff like that. We see that Vietnam is closer to the other 3 countries. And here we have Newfoundland. When you look at innovation and sophistication, again, the 4 countries there, Norway, Iceland, Spain, and Newfoundland, are pretty much the same level, with Vietnam lagging somewhat behind. So this, of course, the national level results are often indicating what the nation as a whole can do to improve the competitiveness of these industries. So it's more possibly up to the government and policymakers than to individual firm operators to try to correct these deficiencies and and improve further the areas where the country is enjoying a competitive edge. So I think that about wraps up my presentation here today. Thank you so much. And now I'll hand things over to Jorge at Syntesa, who will show you how we do this, how the software that we have developed.
Thank you very much, Sven. I will start my screen sharing. So hello, everybody. My name is George. I'm a developer for Syntesa and developer for the PrimeFish prototype. And I'll be demonstrating the tool in a second for you as soon as I can start my screen share. So I hope everybody can see my screen. Let's be starting. So the DSS, I'm going to start with a quick introduction about the DSF framework, and it's composed of basically two parts. We have the PrimeFish DSS tools, which is this platform that you are seeing now, and this is accompanied by a wiki and where you're going to contain information about the project and about the research and about the tools themselves. Registration is already available. If you don't have an account for the DSS, you can register for free by clicking the register link and completing with information. Remember, this is a prototype, so it's very simple. You should have no problem of just entering the information, and you should be able to log in straight away. So I'm going to start by logging in myself with an account that I have. And as soon as you log in, you're going to be redirected to the homepage where you can see the quick access links for the different tools in the DSS framework. You also have just the latest updates and tweets for PrimeFish and their partners. You also have a quick link to the wiki as well, and to the main website for the PrimeFish project, where you can know more about the project, about the different researches and the different outputs for the project. So I'm going to be demonstrating now the competitive position analyzer tool, which is based on the research that Vine created and just demonstrated. As he said, there are two parts, two divisions of this tool. One is for the fisheries and aquaculture competitive index for firm level and for the national level as the second part. We also have to remember that the firm level is also composed and subdivided into the aquaculture industry and the wild fish survey. So here at the home page, you have just this introduction to the tool. You have a quick link to the wiki page for the tool, where you can check some information about the tool, and you're gonna have, you know, the different data about the research and each of the surveys. You also have like some shortcuts. For example, here you can have if you click on this link, you'll be redirected to the explanation of the firm level FASE surveys and the different questions that are asked and different data for example data for each of them. And a description of how this affects the competitiveness, basically what Vine just demonstrated to us. So I'm going to first demonstrate what happens when you run the tool without answering the surveys. The surveys do not need to be answered before you run the tool. But the idea is that, of course, if you want to compare with your performance, you're going to answer these questions before running the tool. So I'm going to choose the wild fish survey, which is not completed here. You can see that it says updated survey and aquaculture is already complete. So I'm not going to complete anything in wild fish survey. I'm just going to fill in the inputs here, and you can fill in with your country name to personalize the report. The country of operation, this is the country at which you're going to be compared at a firm level. So the results for the firm level comparison against your surveys at the firm level will be done at this country. And then you can select the industry to indicate which survey you are using to compare. So I'm going to select the wild fish industry, and I'm going to run the tool. And you can see that my score here, score for cities is 0, because of course I haven't answered anything, but I still can see the score for Iceland and the results for each of the levels. So first you have the results by each of the subdivisions that Svein demonstrated, sorry. So threat of new entrants, of substitute products, the bargaining power of suppliers, of buyers, and the rivalry among existing competitors. So then after that, you have detailed analysis of each of those subdivisions by question. So each question in the survey is going to be represented here by its number. And if you hover the bar, you also have the text for the question and basically the score that was reached in this question. So you can have a detailed analysis of how this is performed. And here we have all the results for Iceland and no results for Sintisa because I haven't answered the survey. The national level FASI for at the moment is going to be displayed the same if you complete or not. It's going to be the comparison of the competitiveness in the national level across the different countries involved in this research. To know more about this research, we also have a link to the article in the wiki that explains it exactly to the part that explains the national level FASI and the different pillars and their different data points and different explanation about what each of the pillars is representing here. So you have first a national comparison and the score for total. For Iceland, you can see it's 4.77. So if you come to Iceland here, I can see this represented here, and it's going to show you the difference between the different countries also involved in the research. And then you have the same score, but now you have it subdivided by pillar, and you have, each pillar represented by its weight and subdivision of each pillar's constituents in a more detailed level. So you can see that we have institutions and infrastructure here, and higher education and training here. So I'm going to return to the main page and quickly show you the survey page. You can see that if I click to update the survey, I'm going to be redirected to a page where I can check each questions or maybe answer specific parts of the survey. Maybe the user just wants to know his competitiveness against new entrants, and so he can answer specific parts of the survey, still see the results for that part. And to answer the survey is very easy. You're just going to read the question, and you have a caption of basically what each point represents in a Likert scale, and you can just insert the different questions as you like and save the changes. And you're gonna see that as you answer, it starts filling out your progress and showing your progress into completion. So I'm going to do the same now with aquaculture industry, where I have everything answered already for quickness. And if I run 2, you're going to see that now I have the score for my company against Iceland, and you can see that it's pretty similar, the results. But I can go into detail now here and see, of course, in which parts I need to improve or which parts are more competitive than the total of my country, and which parts I need, the company would need to improve in this case. And as I said, the national level FASI is going to be the same because it's the data about the country. You can also print the results. You can generate a quick report for that and print it or save as a PDF. You can also download the answers for the firm level in a CSV format, maybe to generate some personal or personalized graphs in Excel, and the same thing for the national level data. And I also would like to remember that this is a prototype, and the idea is that once this starts being used and more users answer the surveys, this tool becomes more and more reliable, with its data being more and more meaningful, and of course more and more updated once it starts being used and improved throughout the time. And With that, I finish my presentation. Sorry if I rush too much, and I make myself available for questions as well. Thank you, and back to Mercedes.
Hello, thanks for the presentation. Before we start with the questions that I hope you all have, let me just also let you know about one more event. That will be the PrimeFish Final Conference that is taking place on the 30th of January next year in Vigo. Okay, is there any question? Then please let us know through the chat window on your right-hand side where I wrote, "Dear all, please enter all your questions here." While you do enter those questions, maybe from my side, George, can you let us know how long does it take the people, or would you say how long does it take to fill in this questionnaire?
That's a very good question, Bjorn. I forgot that you were the one leading the meeting today, the webinar. Apologies for that. So this was one of the concerns that we had, as Van mentioned. We have like 140 different questions that can be filled, and this, of course, in general was reduced, and at the PrimeFish is much faster, and there are less questions for each of the parts. But still, if you are filling up both surveys, it would take a long time, and that's why we subdivided by different sections, and we give the ability for the user to fill in specific parts, and run against just those filled in parts as well. So it's not a blocker if you don't fill the entire survey. Of course, it might take a little bit of time for you to read. I don't know, maybe 30 minutes for you to read all the questions and answer appropriately. But the user can update some of the questions and go back at a later time if he gets tired as well. And this will be persisted across sessions and saved, of course, to be part of the national average for the country the user selected. So it's a bit of a long questionnaire, but the idea is that the user has the possibility to fill in his own time and fill in a part and come back later. And of course, the more answers that he fills, the better will be the results comparison for him. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely, yeah, thank you. I think it's also nice to know for the potential users, and very well explained. So companies in general have to worry for their data that they provide.
Yes, as you could see, at the moment, the tool only shows your comparison against your country, so there is no specific mentioning to the company. And once you enter your data is only used to compose the average for the country, so it's incorporated in the average for all the companies in your country. So basically, there is no real way for you to know which company in that country has, because that's a reflection of the entire country, it's an average of the entire country. So once the user enters their personal data, this doesn't get saved as a personal data, it gets saved as the average for that country, of course.
Thank you. Are there more questions? Yes, I see a question here. It is dedicated to you, Swain, as you can probably read on the right-hand side. As asking about the competitive index and how to better understand how the level price vitality of the aquaculture products are.
Yeah, this is a good question, and this is one of the things that we have been looking at in the project, is the price volatility, especially when it comes to booms and busts. What we have been developing is a special tool for this, and I think Jorge might be able to tell you a little bit more about this. But this is not a part of the competitiveness index, but it is another tool that we have. So, Jorge, you would possibly want to say something about that.
Yes, we actually had a webinar for that last week. It's the Growth Risk Analyzer tool. It's a very nice tool that basically receives as an input a time series of monthly data. Let's say, for example, the price in monthly time series. And this tool basically creates a forecast of the next 12 months based on a regression algorithm predicting the pattern of the price and how it will evolve in the next 12 months. This tool is already available also in the DSS tools. And I guess that I don't know if the webinar was recorded, the last webinar, Bjorn. Maybe you can answer that question. Yeah, maybe people can have access to that and have a look as well.
I think all of them should have been recorded, but maybe Mercedes or somebody from SETMA, please also confirm. As far as I know, this one is for sure recorded.
Yes, thanks. They are being recorded and the presentations are saved. So we are sending more information on the precedent webinar on the Growth Risk Analyzer in the follow-up email. Thanks.
I hope that answers Simal's question. We have more questions here for Swain or for George. Longer because it also takes some time to type in a question here. I'm happy to take any questions and dedicate it to the right person. In any case, good to know, even if you cannot necessarily make it to some specific webinar, at some point there will be this information also available through the PrimeFish website. The fourth questions can only be asked in the webinars themselves, and they will be probably the best way in order to understand tools and way to know how to handle the tools. One more minute, or if somebody has a question, just type it in now. Feeling that Jamal's question was clearly answered. Okay, well then, as it doesn't seem that there are more questions here at stake, I would say thank you all for your attention. It's great that we had the chance to have all of you here, and I hope you enjoyed the short presentation and the answers to your questions. Be aware of the dates of the following webinars that will give you an explanation of the other tools. All the dates are visible, of course, on the PrimeFish website, primefish.eu.